What did we learn from the Raiders-Chargers game on Monday Night Football? What are top waiver wire pickups ahead of Week 5 for fantasy football here in the 2021 NFL regular season? It's time to find out right now as Locked On Fantasy Football begins right here.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. Later, I'll have the start-sit already up there for Week 5, looking at the early plays that you want to go with and avoid maybe this week. We'll do that, but we first have to look at the waiver wire here. We'll break down all the games for you ahead of Week 5 on Matchup Wednesday and Matchup Thursday, but it's Pickup Tuesday where we focus on the waiver wire. We'll put a bow on Week 4, talk a little bit about Monday Night Football, what happened between the Raiders and Chargers, a pretty dominant performance by the Chargers in control here all the way throughout the game. So we'll talk about that, where those teams go from what we saw on Monday night. Then we'll turn our attention to people you should pick up here, depending on your league format and what you need, whether it's plug and play in your starting lineup or some depth there on your roster. We will take care of you here, looking deep dive on anything you need to know here ahead of Week 5, and we will start with quarterbacks, and then we'll get into wide receivers. A lot to talk about there. Then end the show looking at running backs and tight ends, and maybe some streaming defense options that you can also look at this week. I'll give you a couple that should be readily available there for you in fantasy football. All right, let's quickly take care of the takeaways from Monday Night Football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free, available on all platforms. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football brought to you by RockAuto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit RockAuto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. Now, the Chargers look like a complete team, folks. And when we have a complete team, sometimes the things don't happen with the script, with the wide receivers. That was a quiet night there for Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. This Raiders secondary actually playing pretty well, but what did not play very well is the Raiders' run defense. Austin Eckler looks fantastic here. We thought this Joe Lombardi influence coming over, maybe some Alvin Kamara-like usage for Austin Eckler. That's what happened. They've turned him into a workhorse here. So they've tried to use Justin Jackson. They tried to use Larry Roundtree, but really it's all about Eckler. He's staying durable. He's looking good in this offense. Scoring here, used nicely in the red zone as usual. And Justin Herbert's locked in. He's capable of spreading the ball around. He's kind of become like Josh Allen, where he's not always wide receiver force dependent. He's not going to just force feed Keenan Allen if that's not the matchup. Well, the matchup was the tight ends, and he got Donald Parham Jr. in the end zone. He got Jared Cook, the former Raider, with a little revenge touchdown. Jared Cook and Parham just very hard to start with their sporadic usage. So a bit of a bummer there for Allen and Williams. They just didn't need him that much. They were up 21-0 at halftime. Were in cruise control as the Raiders didn't really provide much resistance in this game. So that really helped. On the Raiders side of things, Josh Jacobs came back, but he was ineffective. I think they rushed him back with an ankle injury. That's how you beat the Chargers. They couldn't do that on the ground. They got into a negative game script, and what you saw was the two reliable receivers there for Derek Carr do what they do. That's Darren Waller, tight end, and Hunter Renfrow in the slot. Everything else is a bit hit or miss. A decent game for Henry Ruggs III, but Brian Edwards disappears here. So we know that Derek Carr is going to lock into the middle of the field as much as possible. And we see that with Waller and Renfrow. So Renfrow, every week he seems to come through. This week, the Raiders get the Bears, so good opportunity for Renfrow. We'll talk a little bit more about him on the waiver wire this week, and we'll go from there on this game. So do that. And again, the Raiders have a little bit more value at wide receiver than we think, but I think Renfrow might be the guy we consistently want to look at because he's scoring touchdowns, getting decent volume, and converting those, especially in half and full point PPR formats here. But yeah, Ruggs, we want a little bit more out of him, but Carr is going to be Carr, and that's what we saw. And Carr can disappoint you at any time. So something to remember, he's a matchup-dependent play. He's a streaky play, and the Bears could go either way here. The Bears defense playing well. Khalil Mack revenge game this week. So be wary of Derek Carr. We didn't like him at all in this matchup, and that came to fruition where he couldn't even get to 200 yards had a couple touchdowns, but also threw an interception. That's pretty low scoring at this point, how well fantasy football has gone for quarterbacks here in 2021. Speaking of quarterbacks, let's pivot there. Daniel Jones, this is the last call for Daniel Jones. I think some people may have looked at that Atlanta game and, what's going on with Daniel Jones? They probably looked at, Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are out this week. The Saints defense is not that bad. What happened? Kenny Galladay, over 100 yards. John Ross, long touchdown. Kadarius Toney put together a big game. Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, really effective. So all around here, Daniel Jones is feeling it. He's been pretty consistent. He's not really had a terrible game. The Falcons matchup was a little disappointing, but the injuries happened mid-game where the Giants were a little bit more prepared for that game plan here this week. Barkley is Barkley, which is a big help. The offensive line playing a little bit better. So the Giants play the Cowboys this week. That figures to have a high-volume game for Daniel Jones here with Dak Prescott and that offense dealing in Dallas and also giving up some points. We saw Sam Darnold rush in a couple and do some other damage there. So it looks like wherever the Cowboys go, Cowboys are going to be fine scoring, but the opponent is also going to produce. So Daniel Jones, last call. I think he's a strong start right away here in week 5 if he hasn't been on your roster. But yeah, we got to pay attention more to Daniel Jones because the weapons are real. The offense is starting to have better flow in the play calling, and that's really good to see here. As the Giants have a win, and now we'll see if they can give us more fantasy football production. Now, the next player, this is a player that some people are going to get excited about. Some people are going to be, we don't want to take a chance on a rookie quarterback. We've seen how Justin Fields has played. Some of these other rookies have struggled. Trey Lance. And we have to see, Jimmy Garoppolo is not even for certain ruled out with a calf injury. I think it's probably leaning that way in the short term. They do have a bye coming up here after this game, so that would make sense not to play Garoppolo and see what you have in the upside of Lance here, especially when you're facing Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, the red-hot Cardinals that are 4-0, the only undefeated team in the NFL, lighting it up on the scoreboard. You need a healthy quarterback, one that can make a lot of plays here, and Garoppolo may not be the guy here to win that game. So makes a lot of sense to play Trey Lance this week. It may be a one-week audition. If he plays well, even if they lose the game, I think it might be a full-time transition to Lance. So he has a big opportunity here this week. Cardinals, again, they have a pretty tough defense. Let's keep that in mind. Trent Williams, the outstanding left tackle for the 49ers, was a little bit banged up against the Seahawks. So that would be a big blow there if he can't go. And the Cardinals have a pretty good pass rush for Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt. So something to watch there. It's not the easiest defense. Byron Murphy is playing pretty good corner there. So, but the Cardinals can also give up points, and you can run on them a little bit. It's not like the Rams were totally shut down against Arizona. So keep that in mind. Lance has a lot of appeal in what should be one of the higher scoring games here in the division of week number 5. Now, Taylor Heineke, I've been looking at Taylor Heineke's numbers. He's been very solid taking over for Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's been a QB1 in the 12-team leagues every single week. The volume is there. The weapons are getting it done. What's really helping is the Washington football team defense, not very good. And that's opening up things for shootouts. We saw that with Matt Ryan. We saw that a few weeks ago with Jones. The Buffalo game was ugly, but he still put together some numbers there, Heineke. And you have Curtis Samuel now back with Terry McLaurin. They're going to be without Logan Thomas for a while, but he's made it work with Ricky Seals-Jones. So keep that in mind. So tight end's not going to hurt that much. We'll see about Diami Brown and Cam Sims and their injuries, but right now, Heineke's doing it, and he's running just enough here every week. He's a multiple touchdown guy consistently. We knew the weapons were good in Washington. Scott Turner, we knew they were going to be more of an offensive-minded team than a defensive-minded team, but that's what's kind of developed here. And Heineke gets the same Saints that Daniel Jones ripped for a pretty good game. So the Saints have good coverage there, can make things a little tough, but Brandon Scherf being out might hurt a little bit at right guard. But Heineke is going to be fine. That's probably going to mean less running success and more through the air here with Terry McLaurin and Samuel and Antonio Gibson in the backfield, a little bit more J.D. McKissick as well to make up for that. So good weapons there for Heineke. He's feeling it, playing really well. And the next guy has been off the radar for everybody, but he's in the streaming conversation now. He is Carson Wentz of the Colts. I mean, you look at Carson Wentz, they get the Ravens this week. The Ravens actually have been pretty leaky in pass defense in certain spots. Let's hope the Colts offensive line gets a little healthier. We can help ourselves there, but good schedule coming up for Wentz here. He's looked good. He had multiple touchdowns in a couple of games now. We want him to run a little bit more to pad the stats. We'd like T.Y. Hilton and some other guys to come back here and be more effective. But you look at Carson Wentz, he certainly has some ability. We know he can sneakily put up fantasy points. We saw that even when he was struggling in Philadelphia last year. So And Wentz maybe settling in this offense a little bit more, getting that first win, getting a little bit more comfortable as his ankles get healthier here. So Carson Wentz maybe way off the radar, but easily in super flex and in 2 QB leagues, he has to be owned. I think he can have a lot of value here. But if you're playing the deep streaming game, you can get some decent numbers out of Wentz here in the short term. Finally, the last guy I'll talk about, this seems unusual because Teddy Bridgewater was the choice in Denver, but Drew Lock. We got to look at Drew Lock. He has decent weapons, and that's why we're starting here with Drew Lock, because you look at Noah Fant, there's that. There's Cortland Sutton. Remember, he takes more chances, throws the ball downfield, so that could help Cortland Sutton. Tim Patrick. There's a lot of decent, interesting targets there, and I think they'll be less run heavy here. They're going to be forced to do that. The Steelers look like a tricky matchup on paper because we know their daunting defense and all that may not be the best spot. I would think there's a lot of guys you could trust a little bit more than Drew Lock on the road against Pittsburgh, but they are pretty leaky. There are some things that are happening in the slot that they can exploit, so keep that in mind with Drew Lock. You could maybe get 250 and 2 out of him this week, a lot like Teddy Bridgewater numbers were before he had the concussion last week against the Ravens. So I would expect Bridgewater to miss at least one game. Remember, it's a linear injury, so usually only one game there, but Drew Lock might have some value. If Bridgewater, again, he's had a history of getting banged up a little bit, so sometimes concussions take multiple weeks here. We'll see if that materializes, but Drew Lock, you could do a lot worse. But again, if you had Bridgewater and you're looking at him at 2 QB Superflex, you have to look at Drew Lock here in week number 5. All right, we will get into our wide receiver recommendations here of the week next, and then we'll close with running backs, tight ends, and see if there's a couple defenses that we can stream here for week number 5. But I do have to tell you that we're back and better than ever. All eyes on the Gridironers teams are back for another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season with a new updated site interface. Even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use a mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From football, basketball, boxing, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's continue here looking at the targets at wide receiver we want to look on the waiver wire this week. And we got to start with 2 guys that may have been dropped in a lot of leagues. And I would say you start with Darno Mooney. I'm going to go Darno Mooney ahead of the guy that I was thinking about, as well as Devontae Parker. So it's pretty close, but what's happened is the quarterback change has been helpful for both of these guys. So let's keep that in mind here with these players that sometimes are dependent on where the quarterback situation is going. And Darno Mooney, it's a little bit different for each. With Mooney, he's a speed receiver. He's a guy that can stretch the field. He needs a bigger arm out there, and we saw Justin Fields, the bigger arm. So we'll see Andy Dalton or Justin Fields. We're hoping it's Fields because I think that's better for Mooney. And overall, it'll be better for Allen Robinson in time. But Mooney, we liked a lot as a sleeper going in. Took a while. The Dalton connection didn't work. He didn't have enough time with Fields there in week 3. So in week 4, we finally saw the connection going downfield. I think that's going to be a money combination for many years. Allen Robinson, we know, is a free agent. So Fields to Mooney is going to be a stack that we're going to see in fantasy football, I think, in the next few years, really pay off in the money with that combination. So if it's Fields, I feel better about starting Mooney. I think Mooney still has to be on all rosters at this point. Even in 12-team leagues, he's just that valuable of a receiver. And really, they're not throwing to Cole Kmet or anyone else at tight end. They might also have to throw the ball a bit more should that backfield injury linger with David Montgomery. So Darnold Mooney, liked him. The talent is coming together. You just need some quarterback help, and we're seeing that with Parker. He's more that intermediate short receiver. He can stretch the field at times, but keep in mind, they were trying to implement the stretch the field type of offense with Tua Tagovailoa, adding Jalen Waddle, speed and quickness, and Will Fuller. But they're circling back to the short to intermediate with Jacoby Brissett. It's Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki at tight end. So that's where they're going. I see Tua Tagovailoa is set to return here in a couple weeks against Jacksonville, but Tampa this week. So Tampa's secondary is a mess. There should be some garbage time there. So Mooney and Parker, I think, are plug and plays. I mean, Mooney's getting the Raiders. The Raiders can give up some big plays in the secondary. They got a little bit banged up there against the Chargers. And Parker, again, high volume is going to be there with Brissett, especially now with Will Fuller. He had another injury, broken finger. He's out for a while. Jalen Waddle is still a rookie here that is going to be hard to scheme open. Brissett's going to go for the easier throws here. That means Parker getting open. So Parker and Gesicki, when you have a quarterback change to a guy that's a little bit more caretakery and less chance taking. So think of Brissett like Bridgewater here in this situation for Miami. He's going to take care of the short to intermediate. That's what we saw with Devontae Parker, old reliable, coming to fruition for the Dolphins. Now, when you talk about new players, so to speak, that have some excitement, it's Curtis Samuel. He's going to get more and more involved in this Washington offense. And they had some wide receiver injuries there in the game as well with De'Ami Brown, the exciting young rookie there. They also lost Cam Sims. They also lost Logan Thomas to a hamstring injury. So the targets are going to have to be made up. It's not going to be just the Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick show and that type of receiver. Curtis Samuel, remember, there's some correlation between his usage and crossing over with a style of Gibson back. So when you look at that, I think he's going to be busy. Terry McLaurin is on fire here, and McLaurin's going to get a lot of attention. Samuel's going to see things open up his way. And this is why Washington spent some good money to get him, not just because he had the history with Scott Turner. They desperately needed a number 2 option at wideout to really take advantage of McLaurin's attention. Samuel's that type of player. We saw him finish as a wide receiver 3 last year for Carolina when Christian McCaffrey's out. So I like Curtis Samuel a lot here, and I think you can play him right away as wide receiver 3 against the Saints. Now, here's the big question mark. Let's just address it, shall we? Do you go after Josh Gordon? Looks like he might be playing and activated for the Chiefs. Now, let's calm down a little bit here because we've always tried to make a third receiver happen behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. This happens sporadically. We don't know when Mecole Hardman or Demarcus Robinson or Byron Pringle is going to do something. So why would that change all that much with Josh Gordon? Just a guy signed, learning the offense, is getting into it. I think there's always chance because it's Patrick Mahomes and his big arm, and there's always big play with Gordon that can be made that can look to establish him. But the Bills' defense is pretty hard. I don't know if I would even think about Gordon. I want us to take a wait-and-see approach with Gordon. I don't think he's a bad stash. I mean, a lot of fantasy football experts will be telling you, Jeff Gordon or Josh Gordon. I don't think you want Jeff Gordon at all, unless you're playing fantasy NASCAR about 10 years ago. But when we're looking at Josh Gordon in 2021, again, he's more of a stash in deeper leagues. That is acceptable. But in 10 to 12 team leagues, don't go after Josh Gordon. It's just not worth it. And don't think he's a guy, he's Josh Gordon, he's playing with Mahomes, we're going to put him in the lineup. I think we're always chasing that Browns early career Josh Gordon. And we've seen flashes of it, but nothing there. I think last time we saw it was when he was with the Patriots for that brief time. So I don't know why we believe it's going to work with the Chiefs. Again, the Chiefs have not been able to support that third target consistently that we can count on. And I don't think Gordon's going to be any different. He's going to make the occasional big play like those other guys. That I can see. But right now, it's a deep league stash. Jamison Crowder, you look at him, he just gets the job done when he's in there. Elijah Moore, it looks like he might come back from the concussion this week, the rookie that they're high on there with the Jets. But there was definitely a connection between Jamison Crowder and Zach Wilson playing really well because it's a slot guy that's reliable to get open. All of a sudden, what happened? Corey Davis got open deep downfield. You had Keelan Cole making plays here for Zach Wilson. So when you look at Jamison Crowder, he's just a guy that just can get open in the red zone. We know that's been his calling card in his best years. He's a slot guy, volume guy. So I think they have to play Crowder more. I know they're excited about Elijah Moore, but I think Crowder is a guy that's a rookie quarterback's best friend. Settles, remember, they don't really have a tight end that's reliable there. So you need a security blanket that's open. I think Crowder, with his veteran route running savvy, is a better option here for Zach Wilson, and maybe a guy that we undervalued because the Jets were kind of undervaluing him and had him on the verge of being cut or traded, but they showed how much they needed him here with the way that Wilson responded when he was in the lineup. Now, Rashad Bateman could be back for the Ravens. Why is this relevant when we're not sure if the Ravens are passing him? Because they're opening things up, folks. If you look at where their offense is headed, the running backs, they're not totally sold on here. Remember, they shut down Tyson Williams. They didn't play him against the Broncos this week, even though he was their most productive runner. Latavius Murray's been okay, but they're clearly hurting without J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Those are two guys with a lot of talent. They complemented each other well and played off Lamar Jackson well. But at this point, it's just hard there to just assume that they're going to be just that running team. And they needed a Lamar Jackson final rush there to get over 100 yards. So it's not maybe the old school Ravens by necessity open things up. And I think by personnel, they'll open things up when Rashad Bateman, the first round rookie from Minnesota, comes back. They kind of use James Prochet, Devin Duvernay a little bit. Bateman a little bit underrated as a field stretcher, very reliable route runner, possession guy. I think Sammy Watkins has been okay, but they prefer Bateman because he can do a little bit more. Watkins is an older receiver at this point. So, yeah, watch out. And I think Bateman's also going to be big for the value of Lamar Jackson going forward. So he's just one of those guys I think is just a good technician, comes from Minnesota, very productive career there. So I'm excited to see what this kid can do right away. And I think the Ravens did have big plans for him before he got hurt. And I think we'll see some of that materialize here to maybe retain some wide receiver 3 value. But right now, a really good bench player to add. Now, AJ Green, here's a problem with Arizona. You don't know who's going to be every week. They're involving so many people. You've had Christian Kirk have a big week. Ronald Moore had a monstrous week. DeAndre Hopkins has been very good. Max Williams has gone off now at tight end. AJ Green, the last 2 weeks, has been really good. And part of the situation there is that DeAndre Hopkins was battling a rib injury, so may have been limited. Had some tough matchups as well the past 2 weeks. This is a really good matchup, by the way. The 49ers secondary is just gashed at this point with injuries, so you have some opportunity if they try to double team or contain Hopkins downfield. They've really struggled with number 1 receivers, where AJ Green, the old reliable, remember him? He certainly has something left in the tank, the former Bengal star with his second team. We just thought he was going to be an afterthought, not do much, and that was the case the first 2 weeks. But the last 2 weeks, I've been involved out of necessity. This offense is just getting a bunch of people involved. So you just have to keep in mind if you have Kirk or Green or Moore, you could have boom or you could have bust, totally. And same thing with Max Williams. If you've got him there at tight end or trying to extract value from him, you're hurting in that position. That's what you're looking at here as well. But Green should be owned in deeper leagues. Same thing for Kadarius Toney. We'll see about the hamstring injuries for Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard has a history of durability issues. Darius Slayton, we'll see if he can return. But looked like Daniel Jones was very comfortable with that combination of the 2 new guys, Galladay and Toney. So Toney proved his worth here. I know John Ross made the big play, but Toney was the guy more consistently involved. They used a first-round pick on him. I think they're going to try to use him a little bit more. So I think at the expense of Slayton, because they could put Toney on the outside and Shepard in the slot, could see that going forward here if Jones has a comfort level. So Kadarius Toney, I didn't think there was going to be a lot with the crowd, but some of the crowd diminished here with the 2 big injuries there in week 4. We'll see about their statuses for week 5, but and it's the Cowboys. You figure if Kenny Galladay's out there, he's going to get Trayvon Diggs. That's going to open things up for Toney should the other 2 receivers sit out. Quintez Cephas, it's really hard to trust a Lions wide receiver. Khalif Raymond was making plays as well in the game. Amon-Ra St. Brown has come on. But Quintez Cephas, I think, when you look over the overall body of work over the first month, Jared Goff feels most comfortable with Cephas. So, again, you're going to extract maybe some wide receiver 3 value from some time, but there's a guy there. Randall Cobb, again, do you trust him? Right now, Marquez Valdez-Scantling being on IR with a hamstring injury. They didn't pivot to Robert Tonyan. They didn't pivot to Al Lazard. Aaron Rodgers went down to the Randall Cobb well. That's why they got him, because they wanted some familiarity, and one of Rodgers' guys laughed at it a little bit. Cobb is older. He's kind of diminished his skills. We've seen it with other teams here, but with Dallas, then with Houston. But he's a good fit in this offense. He knows Rodgers really well. He can get the job done. Do I expect 2 touchdowns and really dominant slot work every week playing off Devontae Adams? No, I don't. But he's a guy that certainly has to be rostered in deeper leagues. You have KJ Osborne. We'll see. The Vikings are a bit hit or miss with their use of a third receiver, whether it be a second tight end in Tyler Conklin or a third wide receiver in KJ Osborne behind Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. But let's put him on the radar. And T.Y. Hilton could be returning here for the Colts soon. There's some decent chemistry between Wentz and Hilton we saw early in the offseason. So Hilton could be a game changer there, especially with Paris Campbell not being reliable here as a big play threat for the Colts. Yeah, that was a lot there that we got in here in our second segment here. So we will close looking at, again, running backs, tight ends, and defenses that you should target on the waiver wire. Before we do that, I got to tell you, this episode, again, is brought to you by rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, and now possible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need, Reminder of often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning. Wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on the computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse comes to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. White shoes spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store car dealership. Rock Auto price and reliably low for every customer. They have everything you need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Again, they've got the hardest parts to find there. I needed a side mirror cover for my Ford C-Max. They had it there. I needed a new console cover for the inside of my Honda Accord. Older cars, it didn't matter. They took care of me at Rock Auto, and they'll take care of you as well. Go explore it. They're easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car truck. Right locked on in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car truck will ever need. You can find them at rockauto.com. Again, thanks for making Locked On Fantasy your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. All right, let us close the show looking at the running backs and tight ends and a few streamer defenses to play here this week. And all right, running back, not as much here, but let's start with the situation in Chicago. David Montgomery avoided a major knee injury there, so he's not out for the season. Got hurt against the Lions there. Looked bad, but he might be okay. Damien Williams also had an injury in that game, a quad late. We'll see how Damon Williams responds, but we know Matt Nagy said they've gone through this situation with the Chiefs. Damon Williams was a super sub in Kansas City there when they needed him all the way through the Super Bowl. So Damon Williams is very capable of being a RB that's on the productive level of David Montgomery. He catches passes. He's fundamentally sound. He's going to get the yards that are there. He finishes well in the red zone, which we've also seen this season. So Damon Williams, premium pickup there. Sure, we know David Montgomery's out for sure against the Raiders, but you also have Williams in the quad. So if Williams has an issue, you look at Khalil Herbert here, the rookie that they added for some depth here. And keep in mind, Tariq Cohen is on physically unable to perform list, so there's no other option. These are the guys, Williams and Herbert. They drafted Herbert again for the upside behind Montgomery. Williams is Mr. Reliable, we know, in his role coming over from the Chiefs after the opt-out last year. So, yeah, so we'll watch the situation carefully, but I think they're plug and play. Whoever the healthy lead back is here, I don't think I could play Herbert. Should Williams be fine? But Williams, excellent pickup here for all David Montgomery managers and elsewhere. If you're hurting at running back and you don't have Montgomery, I think you can also target Damon Williams. So we'll see how it goes midweek. Sometimes it's hard. We don't get the practice report until Wednesday. You might have to make a waiver decision before then, but you have to speculate a little bit, take some chances. But regardless, if you've got David Montgomery, you've got to make sure you have Damon Williams. This is a reminder of that. Kenneth Gainwell is the guy that I've been really looking at. I've stashed him in one league for a while, which is a deeper league. I thought he was going to have some opportunities here. I really liked him out of Memphis. We didn't know if he's going to trump Boston Scott on the depth chart. He's definitely done that. But now he's getting that old Corey Clement role, kind of the hybrid receiver weapon type role where they use him in key running situations in the red zone and all that. And it's becoming bigger and bigger. I know the snaps are not massive here in relation to Miles Sanders, but he's the guy they trust in better situations. And you can't ignore that Gainwell has been a lot more effective and dynamic all around here than Miles Sanders. And they're looking for someone to spark this backfield, create some balance, take some pressure off Jalen Hurts' running and passing. And Gainwell looks like maybe the guy who can do that here a little bit more. So he's doing the job here. It's the Panthers this week. The Panthers just were gashed by the Cowboys completely against some runs. So some opportunities if they can get Gainwell some more touches going forward. But I think that's where this backfield's going. Remember, Nick Sirianni and this offensive staff doesn't have any ties to Miles Sanders. They didn't bring him in. So Gainwell's the guy that they handpicked while they were the coaching staff. So they got a guy more for their scheme. So that sometimes happens in the backfield. And again, Miles Sanders is good, but Gainwell, just because we haven't heard about him being as big in a big program with Sanders coming out of Penn State, following Saquon Barkley, doesn't mean he didn't have premier talent. And I think the Eagles got a steal when they got him in the draft. So Gainwell, I really like, and the Eagles apparently too. So let's watch that situation carefully. But yeah, it could be bad situation here for Miles Sanders managers at this point. Samaje Perine is going to be the next man up. It definitely looks like Joe Mixon's going to miss at least this Packers game this week. You also have the rookie Chris Evans, not to be confused with Captain America, but he's there. He's made some plays, but Perine would be the first guy up. He has the most experience, we know, from his time with Washington and other teams there. So we'll see what what he can do here, but he should get the majority of the touches. Another Oklahoma product like Joe Mixon, so similar system. They've trusted in the past. So this was my concern with Joe Mixon drafting him. I just think he always has some durability issues. He's going to look okay, and he's going to have a few nice games, but then the durability pops up. But if you've got Joe Mixon, you got to go out and get some Samaje Perine. So this is why handcuff all your backs as best as possible. If you have a good idea of who the number 2 is going to be and get the majority of touches, you got to do it. We saw that with Chuba Hubbard. They're behind Chris McCaffrey. It doesn't matter if they don't produce as much as you would like. You need someone to start, and touches and volume and things are important for running backs. So that's where you have to go. Daryl Williams is a guy that is also getting more involved for the Chiefs. So remember, he was a Damien. Daryl is the guy that they kept there. And he's just a guy that does all the little things right for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. He's going to pass protect. He's going to get some good red zone power work and deliver on that. So, yeah, they're becoming a running team. This is what they want to do. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, last couple of weeks, it's really turned on. This is kind of what they're doing to be complementary football better here, where they can run the ball, control the clock, help their defense a little bit, and complement Mahomes when things are not there downfield. So Williams seeing a slightly bigger role, but he's no more than a deep league stash with a potential flex option down the line. Ty Montgomery, why it's important is Tony Jones Jr. They were very excited about him enough that they said goodbye to Latavius Murray. Probably regretting that now that Jones is hurting. So Ty Montgomery would be the next guy behind Alvin Kamara. So just have to keep that in mind. If you're a Kamara manager, you have to look behind him and say Montgomery's the guy we have to target a little bit here this week if he's the next guy sliding in. And we did see signs of that there against the Giants. All right, let's turn to tight end. Tight end is actually looking pretty good here. Dawson Knox, we talked about him last week. I knew he was coming on in the red zone. He's really locked in with Josh Allen now. So he's not going to score every week, but he's going to be involved. He's going to get some key targets every week. So if you're hurting a tight end, Dawson Knox is a good place to look. And a lot of people, I think, plugged and played Dawson Knox for Rob Gronkowski last week. We're very satisfied with those results. I also mentioned Hunter Henry being a sneaky pickup last week as he was getting the attention over Jonas Smith. And he did score. Jonas Smith also did score against the Buccaneers. But Hunter Henry, I think, has been underutilized for that team. He's fully healthy now. I think there's a good rapport between him and Mac Jones, so a little bit better than Smith at this point. So, yeah, Dawson Knox, Hunter Henry, feeling it with their young quarterbacks here. Max Williams also doing that for the Cardinals. Now he's had a couple good games in a row. They wanted to use the tight end a little bit better in Arizona, just couldn't find the right guy. It wasn't Dan Arnold last year. So it's Max with 2 X's there. The former Raven. I always liked him in Minnesota, at the University of Minnesota, as a playmaker, and he's shown that a little bit. Good athlete, getting to scheme himself open again. The problem with Arizona is how many mouths can be fed here. Again, it's hurting Hopkins already that Kyler Murray's become a superior quarterback, spreading the ball around. But the tight end looks like it's going to be a key part of what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do. He teased about that last year, but we're seeing that more this year. And the matchup is always going to be there because everyone's focused on Hopkins and the outside receivers and the speed receivers. Williams is always going to be a sneaky guy that gets open for this very dynamic Arizona offense. And yeah, there's a lot of mouths to feed, but there's also a lot of scoring opportunities for the Cardinals because they're such an offensive juggernaut right now with Kyler Murray. So that's kind of balances out there when you say, oh, they're getting too many guys involved. But if they're scoring a lot and all these guys can get involved, you have at least a chance every week with those players. Tyler Conklin is another guy that quiet game for him, but the entire Vikings offense, other than Justin Jefferson, was a disaster against Cleveland, but it's the Lions this week. The Lions have been very giving against everybody. Conklin could get going. I think this will be a game script where they can get in the tight ends versus the 3 wide receivers. I talked about KJ Osborne, but I think this matchup against the Lions at home says more Conklin and 12 personnel for Minnesota. Dan Arnold got in right away for Jacksonville. They want to use the tight end. That's why they made that aggressive trade with the Panthers with C.J. Henderson once James Shaughnessy went down. So look at Dan Arnold. I think they'll use him a little bit more, maybe devise it. They've had some extra time since week 4 with the Bengals game. They go in this week against the Titans, a pretty good matchup. So Dan Arnold, I think they'll design more things for him, especially with DJ Chark down for the season here. So you can't just throw to your receivers with Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault Jr. You got to look at tight ends a little bit more in Jacksonville, especially when the running game is working with James Robinson. So Dan Arnold. Worth to pick up in deeper leagues. CJ Uzomah had a big game there against Jaguars, 2 touchdowns, but we know that's a bit flashy, a little bit matchup based, where they were focused on Jamar Chase, not giving up big plays, and couldn't handle the middle of the field with Tyler Boyd and Uzama. So just 2 big plays, basically, Uzama made there in that game. So we'll see. He had some value with Joe Burrow last year, but the problem for him is that T. Higgins is returning, and it's going to be a lot of 3 receiver sets again here for the Bengals. He should be in there against the Packers, and no Jair Alexander this week. So we'll talk about more of that matchup. But yeah, a good opportunity for those Bengals receivers in week number 5. So Zama going back to being a very valuable blocker all around for Cincinnati. Mo Alley Cox, we've seen this before, but Jack Doyle was banged up with a back injury there against the Dolphins. Mo Alley Cox stepped up with the Carson Wentz. And again, the matchups are not too bad going forward. We have the Ravens, we got the Texans around the corner here, but we'll have to see. It could be Jack Doyle, but I still think you can get some decent value, especially as a tight end 2 from the Colts, whoever's the healthiest guy. Right now it's Alley Cox. We'll see if Jack Doyle can get back and have an impact. Now, let's go to defense and special teams. You got luck to Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they're coming on. They're making big plays every week because of Trayvon Diggs, Michael Parsons. They're getting some pressure in different ways, and turnovers are there, and we saw that last week. So, yeah, they're going to give up points, but they can also make big plays with Diggs. We saw that. So, Cowboys against the Giants this week. I know Daniel Jones not turning over the ball the way he used to at that rapid rate, but Cowboys still something to look at. You can also look at the Minnesota Vikings. They get the Lions at home. The Vikings actually played really good defense last week. Part of his Baker Mayfield just looked off. They threw him off a little bit there, and that really helped in terms of their points allowed and all that. But the Vikings can be disruptive with Danielle Hunter against the Lions. I think they're desperate for one of those SmackDown games, and Minnesota delivers that this week. Arizona, this last call for Arizona. They're legitimate defense. They could get Trey Lance this week. The Lance could make some big plays, but also some mistakes there. So Cardinals not in a bad spot. The Raiders playing Justin Fields and the Bears against rookie quarterback as well. So we'll see. The Raiders home field bump maybe this week. They're favored pretty well in the game, so we'll see. But again, they can get some sacks. They can get some turnovers against that Bears offensive line. And we got to look a little bit about the Falcons. I don't love the Falcons this week. I don't think they're a good defense, but they are playing the Jets. We know how that worked out playing the Titans against the Jets last week. So keep that in mind. But those are some options here this week here on streaming defense-oriented plays for week number 5. All right, there you have it. There's your look at the week 5 waiver wire here. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available, just like this show, on all platforms. This has been another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football. It's a Pickup Tuesday. Good luck in all your waiver wire work this week, and we'll be back tomorrow to start breaking down the games of week number 5.